Rover will
All
be
right.
good enough that as long as he doesn't make an obnoxious noise, he will not even have to worry about waking it up. All right, you have arrived at the bones. There is plenty of room to scoot by the bear as long as you hug the wall.
Yeah, we'll do so. Uh, he hasn't rifled through them or anything.
He seems to have not disturbed them at all.
Damn you, bear! Why couldn't you be useful?
It's almost as if he's here to protect the shrine, not help you desecrate it.
I don't plan on desecrating.
For all you know, your presence is desecrating it.
Because you have Rover, so long as he is asleep. Wait, do you have stealth trained?
No.
Okay, so you will need to continue testing for stealth. If you have stealth trained, you wouldn't need to test because you have Rover. But so you will need to keep testing. Just don't get a colossal fail, and he won't notice you. That being said, be very careful about how you handle the bone situation.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because there's no clear path through them.
I'm waiting for that moment when the bear inevitably wakes up, and then Sotek goes, "This is a good time to end this."
But I can see the stones from here, yes?
If you stand, yes, because you're an elf, and if you got on, yes, yes. The answer is yes.
And these are all goblin bones?
Not all of them. There's a lot of bones there, and some of them are very yellow with age. Like there is a, and some of them are very large. Some of them are even smaller, like maybe small animals.
Okay, second question. The mouth of the cave. I'm standing outside and looking at the mouth of the cave. The stones of the arch that supports. How did they look with that perception that I got earlier? Did they look pretty solid?
The stone support. Oh. The cave entrance has naturally formed over many years. It is there are no like there is nowhere that you could hit something unless you hit something with a colossal amount of strength to like cave it in. It would take like you would probably need the dwarf just to figure out a feat of engineering good enough to seal it off.
Damn. This is where Verve's caution wars with her much larger, more rash.
Nah, man, just call down a big enough lightning bolt. Blast the mountainside down.
It would take a pretty big bolt.
Let's see, I could do that. I just have a feeling I'm gonna fucking fail. Well,
the rest of you can make your way back to camp if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's go ahead and see if I can't do what I did before. Because I want to get over to where I had cleared away bones.
Well, worst case scenario, you get eaten by a bear. So let's see what happens.
So that, what did I do earlier? What did I do before?
You did an athletics check last time. That'll do it. All right, you very carefully take a few steps back and making sure not to hit any bad spots, you run forward and using flawless elven grace, do a wonderful leap over the bones, stretching your back over it pole vault style, and tuck into a nice roll that quietly muffles your movement as you skid across the ground, and you come to a halt just in front of the standing stones, surrounded by a wall of bones. Though you do notice that the part of the back wall that you cleared out a bit is still exposed.
Okay, I want to examine that further.
Okay.
So there was a symbol of a tree, right?
No, there was what could have been a tree, but as you cleared more space away, you realized it was that is a very massive carving, and what you mistook for a tree with branches was actually the antlers connecting
Alright.
to a skull.
Okay. Are there any other carvings around that?
Not that you could see without moving bones out of the way. You can only see the very top right of its skull in the first place. Like, there is a good 4 feet of bones you need to move out of the way if you want to see the whole thing.
Okay. How could I go about this? Of moving a bone or bones one at a time to slowly get it.
I mean, you can do that. It'll just take a really, really long time.
How you get to use that greatest of elven advantages? You live for fucking.
I mean, if you'd like, you can camp out in the cave for the day and pick away at the bones.
I will make sure to stay down low and use anything I might have learned growing up in Athol to try and mask myself from this bear should it wake.
Alright, we'll come back to you in a little bit then.
Okay.
Anybody need to do camp stuff?
Not Raw, I know.
I need to go have a chat with Rolf.
Okay, let's do that.
How are you doing, Rolf? You having a fine day? Sorry, Captain Rolf. Sir.
He starts suddenly from presumably a nap he was taking, and scowls, but when he sees it's you, his scowl transitions to just a slight frown. He says, "Alright, what do you want?"
You've been enjoying the improvement in the cookery?
He snorts loudly before spitting again and says, "All tastes pretty much the same, except I'll grant that one meal you did when you got here was pretty good. Breakfast seemed pretty much the same, though."
You can only do so much with the ingredients you're given. But if you want, I can see if I can make something special for you whenever there's breakfast.
He nods slowly and he says, "Alright, what's in it for you?"
Well, see, I'm not really a cook. I can do a darn fine job of it. My Uncle Alex was a great cook, runs his own little shop. But I'm a watchman, see, and I'm better at doing the watchman thing, walking around making sure everyone's, say, paying their dues, making sure they're doing their hard work, letting people know how things are going. You don't seem like the kind of man who wants to walk around keeping an eye out on everyone. You got bigger, more important things to do. But me, I have time. Cooking only takes so long, and I've got lots of free time in this camp. And there's not much a halfling could do other than watch.
He leans back in his chair thoughtfully for a moment, and he says, "Alright, fine. You can work as a guardsman."
Thank you, sir. When should I start, and what would you like me to be watching for more specifically?
He goes, "Now, I got a job for you. that you'll be great at because you're hard to notice. You go around the camp. He goes, you go around the camp and check out all the tents. The tents are only meant to be slept in at night by them what's paid for them. You find anybody that hasn't paid for their tent or is sleeping in them during the day, you have my full permission to make sure they move on with their day.
Ah, right, sir. Do we have a badge for this? Because I have a feeling that when a big man, burly with lots of muscle, wakes up and a wee halfling's there with a stick prodding him saying, "You have got to get up, I need more authority than me."
He sort of leans back thoughtfully and says, "How do you feel about joining a mercenary company?"
They grow up so fast.
I find nothing wrong with being part of a mercenary company.
He nods and says, "All right, if you want, you can be a watchman here, and I'll give you authority. But you'll be officially part of the Bloody Hounds. That means if we leave, you leave."
That is interesting. How does this work with me oath to the Lord? And he will kind of look over at the tower. Who's got the whole soul binding thingy-mabob?
He chuckles and says, don't you worry about that. No, we all here work for Silverhand, whether we like it or not."
Alright, so what you meaning if the Bloody Hounds are sent out on some kind of task, I go with you?
Unless Silverhand says otherwise, yes.
Understood, sir.
He nods and says, "I'll have the papers drawn up then, but you can go ahead and get started." And he reaches, he leans over in his chair, reaching for a bag, and then realizing he can't reach it, irritatedly finally gets up and limps over to it. And he reaches in, ruffles around for a second, and he pulls out a small kind of stamped, large stamped brass. It's about the size of your fist, and it's basically a flat, almost coin, but on both sides it's emblazoned with a sign of a hound with foam and blood coming out of its jaws. And he flicks it to you, or he kind of puts his thumb over it and flips it through the air at you and says, "Don't lose that. That's going to be the only thing that keeps you from getting a right proper beating for waking men up.
I'll make sure of that, sir.
If anybody does swing at you after you've presented that, you just let me know."
Understood, sir.
He nods and gets back in his chair and says, "Pays the same time as usual, though, once per week."
Sounds good, sir. I'll try to work my way up to something more respectable and be an honor to the mercenary company. And he will turn around and attempt to march. And that will go badly.
Alright, let's pop back over to Verve.
How far do I get?
You are on about probably your 50th or 60th bone when you hear a large form finally shuffling and slowly standing up and yawning behind the pile of bones that you're crouching under.
I get very still.
Alright, roll a stealth check since he is awake now. Though you do get a, so you're not trained in it, you do get a plus 20.
Plus what?
20.
Okay, cut out.
Let's see, 63. He would have to fail this pretty bad for the bear to notice him. All right. It sniffs the air and seems to pause for a moment before it sort of stumbles forward and sniffs at the troll and sort of like sneezes a few times. And then it very slowly and languidly makes its way around the corner, and you just sort of hear it fading away as it seems to stomp somewhere else.
I will let out a heavy sigh of relief and get working a little bit quicker.
All right. You start shoveling bones out of the way. Do you actually have an implement that would be helpful for this task?
My staff.
Oh, you do have a staff. All right. Roll an endurance check. Because this is back-breaking labor. All right, you're doing great. We will come back to you again in just a second. Does anyone else have anything else they want to do in camp? Visit doctors, speak to somebody, get something done?
I guess Drac will visit the doctor.
All right. Drac, you head to the doctor's camp, or tent, which is down here, space, whatever. And as you approach it, you hear a man inside screaming in agony, and you hear another voice muttering, but nothing. But as you walk in, you see that there's a man on a table, and his arm looks like somebody kind of took a. Looks like someone kind of just took a big razor and just sort of ran it, like starting at his elbow, just ran it all the way down to his wrist, and just kind of sheared off a good amount of him with it.
Pleasant. Drac is unfair.
And the man standing over him, glaring behind some glasses and incredibly bald, seems irritably working away at him. And as the man keeps shouting, he finally gets irritated enough that he pulls out a rag, stuffs it into the bottle, and shakes it a few times. Then he pulls out the rag and puts it over the man's face, who is muffled for a bit. But after about 10, 20 seconds of breathing whatever it is that's drenched on the rag, he slowly calms down and kind of like drifts off. And the man
Drac
above
was about to knock him out in another way, but sure.
The man who hasn't noticed you yet is up to his elbows in gore, and finally and takes out takes out a long needle and a lot of thread and starts very carefully sewing the detached part of the flesh back to the rest of him.
Drac just sits there patiently and lets him work.
Alright, he spends about 30 minutes doing his best to put this guy back together, occasionally tutting and dabbing at something and mixing some kind of strange tincture and mixture into the wound. And he finally gets the man at least seemingly put back together and wraps a pretty thick series of bandages over it before finally starting to wipe off his hands. And he turns around and he sees you, and he doesn't jump. He just sort of like narrows his eyes somewhat and says, "How long you been standing there?"
I got to knock the idiot out.
He nods and says,
I'm in no rush to be seen, if you're still working on him.
This one will live or he won't. It'll be hard to tell if the wound's gonna take to healing or if it's just gonna go rotten. We'll see." He puts down, he finishes kind of cleaning off his arms for the most part, and puts his hands or his fists on his hips and turns to you and says, "You look a little beat up."
Ran into a troll.
Don says, "Well, you aren't missing any limbs, so pretty decent for running into a troll."
I thought so.
He gestures to a bench he has sitting against the wall and says, "Have a seat and let's take a look at you."
Drac will sit down.
He sort of lays out. He approaches with a bundle and he sort of flings it, and it unravels into a series of tools and implements and random bandages and stuff. And as he's about to start working, he looks over at you and he says, "You know the price for a visit, right? 6 shillings."
For my life, sounds fair.
He nods and sort of taps the table as he's absentmindedly counting out some various dabs and tinctures and says, "Payment up front."
Drac hands him 6 shillings.
He nods, stuffs it in his pocket, and he gets to work. How many ones are you missing?
10.
Just a sec. And you don't have any critical wounds, right?
Nope. Got dropped to 0, not below it.
Alright, you're fully healed. He gets you all patched up. He applies all sorts of very strange, very strong smelling mixtures to a lot of your bruises and wounds. Gets a few cuts stitched up. But at the end of it, you, in your opinion, smell very poor, but you do feel, and you feel very tired, but you do feel much better.
One thing I do, is there anyone I could go to the camp to get trained so I can advance my strength by 1 advancement?
Yes, but not right now.
Okay.
That is something that you can do. That will be a there are ventures that the 4 of you can agree to, that basically eats up a week of in-game time where you could do stuff like that. But you have to agree to it as a group because it takes your characters out of commission for like story development. So like things will happen because your characters are busy with other stuff. All right, back to the elf.
I just realized I'm sitting on 300 experience and I have no idea what to spend it on.
You should probably figure that out.
Yeah. All
right, back to the elf. All right, Verve. After noisily, since you're no longer hopefully being observed, just smashing a ton of bones out of the way. You finally clear out enough space to see the entire, most of the back wall. So now you can see the full skull shape. And beneath it, you see a lot of bizarre symbols that are very foreign to you. They don't even look remotely close to a language you've seen. And but beneath the skull are a lot of different sketches of what look like people, but most of the people seem to be, there are icons around them. There's something very unsettling about the way they're drawn and posed. A lot of them seem to be missing pieces of themselves, or they're you see some of them, they're 2 sets. On the left is a set of people, and a few of them look really distorted, and on the right there are what look like people, but all of their heads have been replaced with designs of various animals. And from the skull is a series, you see what almost looks like a flame or some kind of, what looks to be, it looks like whatever the skull represents seems to be unleashing something upon these beast-headed individuals. And they all seem to be, when you, it just, the imagery evokes a sense of just death and suffering and pain. And on the left, with the more normal people, some of the individuals look distorted, and you see that one human, or one individual marked on there, is denoted with, they seem to have a head marked out in the, because they're kind of like stick figures. But on top of their head, they seem to be wearing a smaller version of the antlered skull, but it's marked out in white instead of just being carved naturally out of the stone. It looks like someone used some kind of special tool or clay or something to mark it out. And when you look further to the left, you see what looks to be the start of another carving, but it's hidden behind more and more bones.
I will nod and kind of brush myself off and kind of just take it all in, like trying to burn it into my mind.
That being said, roll a agility check. And this is to represent you being quick enough with your eyes to not stare into the skull's eyes now that they're both uncovered.
I've been actually trying to avoid it because of what happened to me last.
Okay. Then it will be very.
still remember that.
It will be very easy. So add 60. All right, you avoid its gaze.
Okay. All right.
That being said, you do have a very intense feeling of being watched. Like, you have, the moment you get the full skull uncovered, you have, like, permanent goosebumps that don't go away.
I will look around, almost kind of paranoid, but I will whisper kind of lowly, I have not come to disturb anything, I just want to learn. And I will kind of do a half bow to whoever's watching, and then I will get the hell out of Dodge, because I've seen all of.
Alright, do you want to climb over the bones, or do you want to try another leap?
So, can I possibly use my staff to help me?
Yes, you can
Maybe
use
get
it.
a bonus?
You can pole vault, yeah.
Okay. What would that give me? Like a 10?
Yeah, not much.
Okay.
Good enough. You clear it. It's a lot closer than the first time you did it, but you do clear it effectively.
Okay.
Also, the rest of you have definitely noticed that Verve is, like, gone. Like, it's been, like, a good 4 hours. That being said, who knows where she could be? She's an elf, she's weird, but, yeah. But, Verve, you don't hear any bear.